Sim Update 15 for Microsoft Flight Simulator should have been releasing today. Unfortunately, it has been delayed. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. There's also some additional details I want to share with you in this video on the subject of ray tracing, cloud turbulence, graphics, level of detail, as well as the weather API. So, Sim Update 15 has been in testing for quite a while at this point, and it was due to release this week, today in fact. Unfortunately, yesterday, Microsoft announced that the update is going to have to be delayed. This is the community post they made to the forums. It said, as many of you may know, Sim Update 15 was initially targeted to be released tomorrow, March 26th. After careful consideration, the Sim Update 15 release will now be moved to April, with the exact date to be determined. Your feedback has helped us identify issues that we would like to continue to work on, so many thanks from our team for your detailed reports and efforts. Our beta testing will continue during this time, and forum discussion can be accessed here. Unfortunately then, no specifics on the exact details and reasons for this delay, but I'd rather see a delay rather than have a patch rolled out that ultimately messes up the sim. So if there are any problems, then this is certainly the right call. Now, interestingly, City Update 6 is set to release on the 17th of April. At this point, there's no reason to suspect that City Update 6 is going to be delayed, so it seems very likely there's going to be two big updates in April for Flight Sim. Hopefully then we'll get more specifics on that release date very soon. Now moving on, I wanted to talk about a few other details, and this came from the recent Q&A, the developer Q&A with Microsoft and the team over there at Asobo. Now, I did cover most of that in the previous video, however there were a number of points that I simply couldn't fit in due to the length of the video, so we're going to discuss those today instead. And first and foremost amongst those are ray tracing. So the subject of ray tracing has come up quite a few times over the years, and quite a few years back Microsoft mentioned that ray tracing, full-on GPU created ray tracing, would be implemented into the sim. So during the live stream, this was questioned, where is it? It's been quite a while now, and there's still no sign of this. The question was answered by Asobo co-founder Martial Bossard. I'll give you the bottom line up front. Basically, ray tracing in terms of GPU accelerated RTX style ray tracing is not going to be coming to Flight Sim 2020. And whilst it wasn't explicitly stated that it's going to be implemented into Flight Sim 2024, it was said that it's coming to a future version or a future update. So that's the short version. The longer version has a few more details here. So currently, the way ray tracing stands in Flight Sim right now is there is an optimized form of ray tracing included. And this is a method of ray tracing called ray marching. This is used on real-time ambient occlusion as well as reflections. Whilst this certainly does a reasonable job, it does have a side effect, a bit of a negative downer really, in that the method that's used to create this effect often introduces grain or dithering, and this is something you'll notice on reflections sometimes. It's caused then by the limited number of rays that are being used. So in terms of the future, Martial said that the team is working on implementing a real ray tracing that uses GPU dedicated hardware. The problem though is that this is going to require significant changes and includes creating a secondary rendering engine. They didn't go on to exact details on what that means, but it does sound quite extensive. It also requires uploading scenery data to the GPU. I guess that's a part of the whole process there. The bottom line then, this is a significant amount of work. It is planned for a future update, but will not be included in Flight Sim 2020. The next subject worth talking about here is cloud turbulence. Now, this is the turbulence that you experience when flying through clouds. Particular note, the community has given feedback that users have reported there's very little turbulence generated in live weather clouds, even when the clouds are thick and large, and all of this is specifically related to live weather rather than customized weather or any other weather settings you choose to use. So Asobo have investigated this issue, although based on the Q&A, it doesn't seem as though that was necessarily extensive investigation. It was said that during the time of the investigation, there was no real-time weather, that's live weather around the world, that would have these massive weather forms. So instead, they looked for the largest rainstorm in the world at that particular time, which turned out to be in Africa. Sebastian, Asobo's CEO, flew through this storm and said he encountered turbulence bumps of 0.5 G, and he felt that that was quite strong in the short periods of time that he was flying through there. The takeaway point, Sebastian said, is that he felt turbulence is working as designed, and it's generated in the same way as in the weather presets, However, he did acknowledge that the live weather data may not always generate the thickest clouds possible, and this could result in less turbulence in some cases than one might expect. And this is because the live weather tends to dial back from the largest cloud forms. Obviously, this isn't ideal, so Asobo have said they are looking in ways of changing this and improving cloud density. However, they also said that this will involve quite a lot of work, so personally, I'm not expecting to see that happen anytime soon, but ultimately, I guess you never know. Next, we come to the subject of terrain level of detail and ground resolution. Now, the users over the years have requested whether or not it could be possible to separate texture resolution and draw distance into their own sliders, instead of putting them both to be controlled under the same slider. Basically here, users would like the ability to set these independently from each other so they can choose which they prefer, whether they'd want great ground texture or a better draw distance. Now, the way it currently works in Flight Simulator is that the sim uses a single terrain system that bakes everything, including ground textures and aerial imagery, into a single texture with the same resolution. And that means, because of the way this works, if you increase the resolution of ground texture, it also increases the terrain level of detail, and of course the draw distance as well. So what about separating these out into separate sliders? Well, it was explained that this would be difficult to create a separate system for ground textures due to the complexity and the performance cost of the existing terrain system. It seems then that there's basically this isn't going to happen, and you may have noticed there does seem to be a bit of a repeating pattern here. During this particular section of the Q&A, Jorg followed this all up by mentioning that Flight Sim 2024 uses a completely different terrain system that may allow for more flexibility in terms of texture resolution and draw distance. The main points here then were that both Microsoft and Asobo do acknowledge that it's a good request to have separate texture resolution and draw distance, but they explain that it's just not possible in the current terrain system that's used in Flight Sim 2020. Moving on to another subject entirely, we come to the issue of the Weather API. Now, this is the protocol that will allow external developers, third-party developers, to tap into Microsoft and Microsoft Flight Simulator and use the weather data in the third-party app. So basically, any third-party developer out there who wants to create an app would be able to use the weather data embedded into Flight Simulator. And this is something that those of you who have been following along with the feedback snapshots will be aware of for a long time. It's been something that's been highly requested. Unfortunately, it seems that it's just something that's not going to happen. And the reason for this comes down to data ownership. Microsoft themselves don't own the weather data used in Flight Simulator. That data is provided by their partner, Meteo Blue. So, whilst Microsoft do have a license with them to include that data inside of Microsoft Flight Simulator, that license doesn't extend to allowing third-party users to tap into the API and use that data themselves, because that would essentially be Flight Simulator distributing Meteo Blue's data directly, and that's something that Microsoft just are not authorized to do. So a little bit of a disappointing answer on this one, although to be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit surprised that it's taken so long for them to actually answer this, considering the answer seems to be, at least on the face of it, pretty straightforward. On a final note, this year's Flight Sim Expo 2024 is set to take place between the 21st and the 23rd of June, and it's set in Las Vegas at the Rio Hotel. The Flight Sim Expo is perhaps one of the largest and most interesting Flight Sim Expos of the year, and it's been confirmed that 60 different partners are going to be attending, and that includes Microsoft. So hopefully we'll hear some new details about the sim at this event not too long away at this point. So that brings us to an end of this video. Thanks to everyone for watching all the way to the end. And whilst you're still here, why not check out one of the other videos on the screen right here. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.